Hari Om Tat Sat. Namaste, everyone. We will prepare ourselves for meditation now. Sitting comfortably in meditative posture of your choice. Long spine, erect but not rigid. Shoulders relaxed. Your face relaxed. Chin slightly tucked in. Gentle smile on your face. We will begin by asking ourselves a few questions. Who am I? Who am I? What do I want? What do I really, really want? What is my purpose in life? How can I help? How can I serve? What am I grateful for today? In this moment, what am I thankful for? Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, let go of all these questions and answers out into the universe, who will take care of them for you and build them to manifest in your life. Now gently introduce your Guru Mantra. If you are initiated, you can chant mentally, silently repeating your Guru Mantra. If you're not initiated, for today, use the mantra Soham. Soham, or your Guru Mantra, repeating it mentally. If you find yourself getting distracted by sounds in the environment, or a physical sensation, or an experience that you seem to be looking for, bring your awareness very gently back to the mantra and continue meditating. I'll watch the time and let you know when to come out of your meditation. Now let go of your mantra and sit for a few moments with your eyes closed, breathing comfortably. Become aware of your surroundings, of where you're seated for meditation. Become aware of the space around you, the sounds around you, and gently bring your palms to heart center. Rub your palms together, and when they're nice and warm, place them on your eyes and across your face, looking into your palms as you very softly and gently open your eyes. Welcome back. Yesterday in India, and today, for those of you who are not in India, in previous or earlier time zones, later time zones actually, will have celebrated the last day or the fifth day of Diwali. The fifth day of Diwali in different parts of India or in different Hindu traditions are celebrated in different ways, all of them giving significance to different aspects of philosophy, legend, folk, culture, all of that. One of the ways in which we, one of the ways in which this day is celebrated is by worshipping or celebrating it as Balipadyami. And another way is Bhai Dooj. Okay. And of course, they also have other traditional celebrations like Tulsi Puja, where the Tulsi plant is worshipped or venerated. Tulsi Vivah as well. So I will quickly speak to you about Balipadyami and Bhai Dooj. Okay. So Vishnu, as we know, one of the Trinity, the Vishnu is the sustainer, Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the sustainer, Shiva is the destroyer. But although we've got these three, the three murtis, the three aspects of divinity, we also know that they are just three aspects of the same one single consciousness, one divinity. They are not different. It's like my teacher gave this example and it was a very interesting one. It was a nice one. When we think of any of us who work, if we work, we wake up in the morning and say a working mother. She wakes up in the morning and, she brushes her teeth and whatever she needs to do, she has a shower. That's for herself. Then she has to get the children ready or, uh, if whatever the family or her pets or whoever it is, so she takes care of that family and she gets into that role and she's creating something there. And then once that is done, she leaves and she goes home. I mean, she goes to the office or her workplace, and she's doing all the things that are required as an employee or an employer or a businesswoman or whatever. She does all of those tasks. And then when her day is done, she comes back home and she does whatever you need to do at home for herself, for her family, for her recreation, whatever. And she does all of that. So all of these are different roles performed by the same individual. Okay. And that's how the Trimurti, Vishnu, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, Shiva are looked at. They are the same consciousness doing different roles. while one is breathing, I mean, while one is creating, at the same time, something is destroying, and something is being sustained. If you, at any given point in time, we don't have to wait till, oh, this is the sustained phase, this is Vishnu's time, and now some time later there will come the Shiva's time. No, all of those three times and moments are right now, they're happening right now. When I think of a new thought, that's the creation of a new thought. And for that new thought to come in, a previous thought has just died, has just been destroyed. And while I work on that particular thought, it's being sustained. So Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara are working in my thoughts right now. And while I am talking and doing this, while you receive it, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara are working in your thoughts. So, on a thought level, also, or anything that we do, our breath, for you to inhale, the exhale needs to die. For the exhale to complete, the inhale needs to die. And then there is a pause in the middle. There is a little bit of a Vishnu moment when it sustains it. So, these three happenings are going on in our lives all over and all the time. So, Vishnu had many different avatars as well. Okay, and in the tradition, there were many different devotees of all the different forms, but there was one such very, very devout, ardent devotee of Lord Vishnu. His name was Prahlad, and he was so devoted to him that despite all the dangers that he experienced, excuse me, he would not, his devotion to Lord Vishnu did not recede, did not become any lesser. And so Vishnu came down as Narasimha, and that is half man and half lion in that avatar, and gave him a boon saying that you don't worry about anything. I will take care of you, and I will look after 7 generations of your people. Okay, uh, in your what you say, not your lineage, but your lineage, okay, all your generations to come. 7 generations are who I'll take care of. So, in one of these generations of his, there was a child born as a king, as a prince, and then later on as a king. He was named Bali, and Bali was also known as Mahabali because he was a very, very righteous king, very just, very wise. He looked after all the needs of his people, of his kingdom, and he eradicated poverty to the extent that there was no disparity. Everyone had abundance of food, of wealth, or whatever they needed. So there was no crime. There was zero crime. There was no looting. There was respect. Everything was perfect. And seeing this, the devas in Devloka. So you remember we said that the devas are not gods, right? Devas are just beings of light. Okay, they are little bits of enlightenment, but they have their own ideas, they have their own elements of ego and all of that because they have not transcended that. Their king is Indra. Indra, who is the mind that is getting enlightened. Okay, when we say getting enlightened, it's getting enlightened because all these different devas inform how he gets enlightened, how he doesn't. They throw him off track and all of those things. So all these devas, they thought that if this Mahabali continues with all his good deeds, then there is a risk of him transcending up to Swarga, heaven, one of the heavens, and take over Indra. So they were very upset and they didn't want that to happen. So they went to Lord Vishnu and said, "You have to do something. This Bali fellow here in on down on earth is creating, all the goodness, and Indra is at risk, or Indra's leadership is at risk." Was it really at risk? No, it was a perception. Okay, the perception that informs the mind. Remember that because Indra is the mind behaves only by way it perceives things. So all of these and all of our senses give us information, give us knowledge, give us light. So devas, beings of light, are all these indriyas and the jnana indriyas, the karma indriyas that we have. Okay, they receive. Bali is the perception. Bali is the trigger, the object that is creating all these different changes. So Vishnu has told Prahalad that seven of your generations will be protected by me, and nothing will happen. I'll let no harm come to them. I'll be protecting him. So what happens is he says, okay, now he cannot deny the Devtas their request as well. So he thinks and he says, okay, he takes on the form of one of the avatars of Vishnu, which is known as Vamana. Vamana is one, it's known as either a short, small being, okay? It's known as a small being, or in some renditions, he's also referred to as a child. So he takes this form and he goes down to earth, okay, as an avatar. Now, meanwhile, Mahabali prepares to have a big yagna done. A yagna is like a ritualistic sacrifice or a prayer, and all of this for a particular end. And it's called the Vishwajit Yagna. Now, this Vishwajit Yagna, while this is being done, it's a big, elaborate ritual. The idea is that if anyone approaches the person doing the yajna, in this case, which is Mahabali, and they ask him anything, he is bound to give it. He has to give it. Okay, that is part of the sacrifice that is offered in this yajna. So Mahabali was very just and he said, okay, whoever comes, I'm going to do whatever is required. But then while he's there preparing and doing his yajna, he sees this little person coming towards him, and you can see that he's coming towards the king. But this little being, and we say little because in some instances it's a child, sometimes it's a smaller, a miniature version of a man. It's not a dwarf, but it's just a tiny being. But this person is filled with tejas, filled with light, and is glowing, is luminous. And Mahabali is, wondering who is this person, and whatever he wants, I will give him. So he comes down and he asks this little fellow, like, what can I do for you? How can I help you? What can I do? And the little boy looks at him and says, I just want a piece of land. And Mahabali says, of course, this is all my kingdom. I can give you. How much land do you want? I can give you whatever it is that you want. And this little boy says, I just want land that covers my 3 footsteps. And Mahabali looks at him and says, you've come to me when I can give you anything that you want, and you've asked me for land that covers the expanse of your 3 footsteps. And this is a little child. And the boy, in all his wisdom, looks at Mahabali and says, do you know that someone who is not satisfied with 3 feet of land will not be will not be content with anything, not even if the 3 lokas are given to him. Okay, nothing. He will not be happy with anything. And Mahabali was very impressed and very touched, and he was already almost in awe of this little person. But just behind him, his guru Shukracharya was also sitting and watching this thing, and you know he sensed that something was not quite right. So he took Mahabali aside and said, listen, I'm your guru, and I'm telling you, don't just commit to anything that this fellow says. Don't give away whatever you say. Don't just give him whatever he wants, because I have a feeling this might be Lord Vishnu, okay, who's here to trick you and to see, what you'll do or whatever. Mahabali said, nothing doing. I'm doing the yajna, which means that I have to give him whatever he asks. He has asked me and I have already committed. I have given my word. Moreover, remember, he was also a very big Vishnu devotee as well. And he said, if this is Lord Vishnu who's coming here to ask me for something, then all the more reason for me to give him whatever it is I want. So the guru was very upset that Mahabali wasn't listening to him. And he said, what's the point in you having a guru? What's the point in you having me if you're not even going to listen to me? What's my place here? And he gets angry with him and he walks away. He leaves him. But Mahabali is intent on offering whatever this child asks and says, okay, what do you want? So he's like, okay, I'll take my first step and I'll tell you. So he takes his first step and he grows from this little being to this huge being, and his first step spans the entire earth, all the lands and the waters. Okay. Everything is taken over. And now there's no more land to give, physical land. With his second step, he covers the entire expanse from the earth to Swarga, to heaven. Okay, and that's all covered. So now the earth and the air and the space around it is all taken up by 2 feet already. Now, in this yagna, if you look at certain images, you'll find that most of the gods and goddesses also carry a little water vessel, and that's usually either to drink, it's a drinking vessel, but it's also where, when all these yagnas are offered, they're offered by the person offering the yagna, water is poured into it. So Mahabali was pouring water into it to give this boy what he wanted, but this boy had his second foot in heaven where Brahma was there. Brahma saw that Vishnu was coming up. It was Vishnu's foot. Vamana was Vishnu. And he bowed down to him and he poured Ganga, or the Ganges, water from the Ganges, to offer Vishnu, who was coming into heaven. And that water turned auspicious, or blessed the Yagna water that Mahabali was pouring towards Vamana. Okay, to say that as the mind gets that enlightenment, it reflects also in the activities that we do in our sensory world. Okay, so now he's got his 2 feet and he's covered everything on earth and everything in heaven. Now, what can Mahabali give him? So he says, so Vamana says, okay, now where do I place my third foot? Okay, where do I place my third footstep? And Mahabali sits down and bows down and he says, Lord, you can place it on my head. Okay, everything else is taken, you can place it on my head. And with that humility, he offers his head, which Vishnu, as Vamana, the divine consciousness, places his head on him, but pushes him down towards. So we've got this earth plane, and you've got many planes of heaven and many planes below in different degrees or different frequencies of the earth and of existence. And he pushes him down into a level or a layer or a frequency of existence called Sutala. And it's not hell, it's there. And in that way, with that humility that his devotee offered him, Vishnu gifted him an eternal life of happiness, of prosperity and all of that in a different realm altogether, where, and also at the same time satisfying the devtas that okay, he is not coming up here, not in this cycle of existence. But what he told Vamana was that when this cycle of existence is over and the next one comes up, with your humility and your devotion and the work that you've done, you will take over, you will become Indra. You will be the enlightened mind, not the enlightening mind, the enlightened mind. Okay. Now, what this tells us is about the need for humility and surrendering when it comes to evolving our consciousness. Okay, consciousness, which is Vishnu, consciousness, which is Shiva, that divine consciousness comes to us. Not, it's not an easy task, of course, when we show up with complete humility and surrender. So for those of us who are there for the Navratri sadhana, also we spoke about surrender, because surrender is very important. It's an important part you know of letting go of all the attachments that we carry, all the attachments that say, the moment you have those attachments, then you're weighed down, then you're not free. Surrendering is when you just loosen your body and everything and say, just do through me, use me for that purpose. And then you allow the consciousness to say, whatever is your will, let that happen. And that's even the connection in when Jesus was crucified. When he says, let thy will be done, it was just that. It was not just the crucifixion. It was not just him dying and then blaming God and say, hey, you didn't take care of me. No, it was that even in this moment, when I have my last few breaths, you know thy will be done at any given point in time. And also when he says to forgive the people, because we always speak about dharma and adharma going side by side. The people who were killing him didn't know that, you know, how they were influencing and why they were doing what they were doing. They didn't know, but it was in their karma to allow or to create that kind of pain, that kind of violence that would allow for Jesus to be crucified. So, in that adharmic action, in that adharmic and painful crucifixion, was the dharmic righteousness of the liberation of Jesus, where he was one with the consciousness, one with his father, as he referred to it. You know, what we would refer to as Brahman, what we would refer to it as consciousness, as Vishnu. So there is a lot of similarity in how they go hand in hand. There's not much of difference. And that's why Bali Padyami, Bali, Mahabali, Pada refers to the foot. So it's the festival in itself also signifies the importance of surrender and humility through the recognition of this particular day as Bali Padyami. Okay, so it's a very consciousness based practice. But while this is practiced in many places in India, there are different folk cultures that are there. So I'll take a few more minutes. There was in this village, there were there was a brother and a sister. The sister was older, much older, and there was a younger brother. And as tradition would have it, over time, the girl was married off and she went to a different village and she lived elsewhere. But there was always this tradition of, the sisters coming over or the brothers having this relationship with the sisters where they tie a rakhi and the brothers vow to protect their sisters. And the sisters have, the rituals of offering a tilak or doing the arti and blessing and praying for their brothers and all of that. Now, this boy grew up one day to say, "Where's my sister? You all said I have a sister, but I haven't seen her. And where is she?" And they said, "Well, she's married and she's moved over to the other side of the forest. And the river there is very dangerous because it rises, it can kill a lot of people. So she doesn't come back and she's just there with her in her marital home." And the brother says, "No, I want her to come and visit me. I want to meet her. And everyone has a sister and everyone gets all of this done and I need to meet her." So despite everyone telling him, of the dangers of it, he said, "No, I will go." And he tells his mother, "I'm going to meet my sister." And she says, "Okay, if that's the case." She realized that the sister would not come unless she gave the sister a task to, do this. So she says, "Okay." She tells the son, "Fine, go there. And when you meet your sister, tell her that she needs to accompany you back so that she can help me find a bride for you." So the boy says, "Okay, yeah, whatever." And now when he gets there, when he goes, when he leaves the village, he has to pass through the forest and the river. Now, but when he enters the forest, a tiger comes forward and, you know, threatens to kill him. And the boy says, "Listen, I need to go and meet my sister. And just give me a few days. I'll go, I'll meet her, I'll be with her. And when I come back, you can eat me. That's fine. You have my permission. Just please allow me to go." And the tiger senses that, sounds like a righteous fellow. Let's let him go. And, when he comes back, then I'll eat him then. Then he meets a snake. And the snake also wants to, do something to him, either bite him or I don't know what kind of a snake it is, but bite him, swallow him, python, or whatever. And the boy says the same thing, "Let's make a deal. I need to go there, meet my sister. When I come back, you can do whatever you want." The snake also agrees. Goes forward and he has to pass a few mountains, and the mountains are dropping rocks. And the mountain says, "I'm sorry, I can't let you go." He says the same thing. He's like, "I'm just going. I'll be back. Please allow me to go, and I need to meet my sister." When he comes to the river also starts to rise, but he says, "Please, please don't rise yet. I just need to meet my sister, be with her for a while, and I'll come back." And the river says, "Okay, yeah, seems like a good enough reason. Go ahead. I'll take you when you're back." So he crosses the river peacefully and safely. He gets to his sister's village, meets his sister, and there's a lot of they have a gala time. There's lots of good food, enjoyment. The sister is very glad to see her younger brother. The brother gets the joy of what the sister is supposed to do for him, or what he wants his sister to do in terms of the rituals, in terms of sharing moments and everything. And after a few days, the boy says, "Okay, listen, I need to go back, and my mother wants you to come back so that you can help her find a bride for me. But let me tell you something." And he tells her of these things on the way. He's like, "Please come with me because mother has asked you to come. But I want to tell you beforehand that by the time we get back, I might not exist. So there might be no question of the bride as well." So the sister gives it a thought and says, "No problem. We'll leave. Okay. And I'll prepare for this." So what she does is she goes about and she collects some, food for the way, and she takes some flowers along. She takes some rice. She takes some meat, milk, and everything. She cooks that meat and she takes it along. So when she's going there, they come across the river, and the river is ready to take this boy back. But what this sister does is she offers a prayer to the river, and she offers it some rice and says that, "This is my offering to all of you. Please let us go." And the river is very happy that she's done this, and the river allows them to pass through. Then the mountain comes by, and to the mountain she offers the flowers and does some rituals to recognize the divinity in the mountain. The mountain also lets them go, offers the milk to the snake, and offers the meat to the tiger. So everyone's happy with whatever she's done, and they leave the boy, and the brother and the sister make their way towards the village. And then they get a bit tired, so they're resting. While they're resting, an old woman, like we have in fairy tales, a witch comes by and tells the girl, "Listen, don't think your troubles are all over. There's still a lot of threat on or risk to your brother's life. Okay? I can't tell you exactly what it is, but to prevent anything happening to him, from the time you reach the village, you have to start cursing your brother. You have to just curse him constantly. You have to abuse him. You have to mistreat him, humiliate him. You have to do all of that." And the girl just looks and she's like, if it's okay, fine, I'll do it." And then the brother and sister continue. The brother has no idea of this because it was just a conversation between the girl and that the old woman. And the moment they step foot into their village, the sister, as she was asked, starts cursing the brother and humiliating him and abusing him. And, and the boy is thinking, what just happened to her? I mean, she was fine just a minute ago, and now what happened? And this continues on and on and on, and people are starting to get very tired and frustrated with her. But she continued doing what she had to. They find a bride, the boy is getting married, and then she starts making she's a perfect pain. Okay. And she's mistreating the bridal party and everyone, and there is nobody who gets away from thinking that only some people being are subjected to her misbehavior. Finally, when it comes to the day of the wedding, she tells them, "Listen, don't come." So they're supposed to come through the front door, the bridal party and the groom's group. She says, "Don't come through the front door, take the back door." They said, "What do you mean you don't come through the front door?" He's like, "Don't come through the front door. I'm telling you, just don't come through the front door." And then for a while, she takes a nap. And while she's napping, the wedding party says, "Look, she's sleeping. What she's got all this stupid idea of us coming through the back door. Let's just go through the front door." When he comes through the front door, when the groom just walks through, the entire door frame just falls on him. Okay. And the girl wakes up and she's like, "Oh, why did you not listen to me? You never listen to what I have to say. And now look, you've had to suffer the consequences of this. You should have just listened to me, whatever." And then they all take care and they get him out of that thing. His life is obviously saved. And I don't know why obviously saved, but it was saved. And the wedding happens. And, in a few days, the girl says, "Okay, my job here is done. He's married, he's safe. I'm leaving." And everybody, the groom, that is her brother, her mother, everyone is so happy that she's finally leaving, that this entirely negative, pessimistic person is finally leaving and going back to her marital home. And as she reaches the edge of the forest, she just turns around and tells her mother, she's got tears in her eyes because she's had to spend all this time, uh, not just inflicting all this pain on the people who she loves, but also be on the receiving end so much that when she's leaving, they're happy that she's leaving. And she did all of this for her brother, for her to save to save her brother's life. And then she tells her mother this is what had happened and this. And all of a sudden, everybody says, "Oh, what a great sister, that she sacrificed even at the expense of her own reputation." You know, she went on to do all of these things to save her brother's life. And with that, and this is a folk story. This is not a Puranic story or anything. This is a folk story, which goes on to say that, and from that day onwards, the relationship between the brother and the sister, which is always so auspicious, and we know that in many Indian traditions, a brother and sister relationship has got many ways of expression, in the scriptures as well as in traditions. And they brought this ceremony in of Bhai Dooj, usually where sisters are away from the house also, once they've married, to come, and then they will do the aarti, they'll do, they'll do a puja, they'll pray for his well-being and for his good health. And at the same time, the brother also vows to protect his sisters, because that's what dharma demands. And that's why we've got these two festivities. Now, I've explained why we have Balipadyami. The aspect of Bhai Dooj is a little different. Now, this is something that I have inferred. I didn't ask my teacher, and I'm not entirely sure how much it is, but the way I think of it is, in Hindu culture, in Indian homes, the daughter, when a girl is born in the family, she's considered Lakshmi. Okay. And in families where she's married and she's welcomed in as Lakshmi. So a woman is always considered, okay, traditionally, not how things are in contemporary times. But a woman in Hindu culture is considered as an embodiment, a personification of Ma Lakshmi. Diwali is a festival where the main day is a celebration of Ma Lakshmi. And when it is celebrated over 5 days, the different rituals involve either celebrating Ma Lakshmi in different ways, or to celebrate the need for evolved consciousness. That is the philosophical aspect of Deepawali. So, after the third day, when Lakshmi Puja is done, the other 2 days also have aspects of how you elevate your consciousness through the different myths that we have in the scriptures, along with the recognition of Ma Lakshmi in her different forms, which also includes Bhai Dooj. Okay. Where the daughter of the house, the daughters of the house, the sisters all come together and they are celebrated. They are not necessarily worshipped, because but respected and given their place, given their due welcome, their due greetings, all through the festivity of worshipping Ma Lakshmi. Okay. And that's why Bhai Dooj. And in both of these, what comes through is, even in the Bhai Dooj folk story, what comes through is an act of surrender and humility from a directive that consciousness guides through us. When consciousness tells us, when the divine tells us, listen, I want you to do a headstand, you don't come and say, oh, anatomically, my neck is not correct and my shoulders are not correct. No. Your neck and your shoulders and everything are what the divine understands better. So when you get a directive from the divine, you don't negotiate with the divine. You do it because you surrender. And you come in through a place of humility, right? Not just towards the divine. Of course, humility, arrogance, whatever, doesn't affect the nature of the divine. It only affects us. And when it affects us, it affects those around us. So, humility also to those around us. So, the main aspect of what we need to do at this point, and there is no task for me to tell you, there is nothing for me to say, okay, everyone, we're talking about humility. So, this is what I want you to do. No. Humility is something that you will realize on your own. It's a self driven objective. It is a self driven aspect. Nobody can come and tell you. Of course, maybe, as parents, sometimes we may choose, we may educate our children, but how? Not by telling them. They're always by actions, because our actions then influence somebody else. But as adults who are actually, or as sadhakas who are taking our path for spiritual evolution, humility is something that we will look within to say, how can I be more humble? How can I surrender? So, humility and surrendering go hand in hand. Humility is also another foundation, it's the foundation for spiritual evolution, for spirituality. There is no spirituality without humility. It just doesn't exist. You can't, they're not they're not even exclusive. They are the same thing, humility and spirituality. So, on that note, I leave you with these thoughts on increasing the your humility factor, that so that your consciousness may evolve. If consciousness evolves, spirituality evolves. Your spiritual self develops. Okay. And I'll leave you with that thought. Hari Om Tat Sat. If you've got any thoughts, any questions, we can take a minute. Otherwise, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty.
Stories are so intriguing to me.
Yes, the stories are brilliant. Many of these stories are, some of them are what we read, some of them are what we hear from our teachers. And one of my teachers, she's brilliant with stories. Oh, I must tell you this then. So there is this teacher of mine, and her name is Swami Dharmakirti, and she said that she loves these stories, and she's grateful to her principal, who was an Irish nun when she was in boarding school as a little girl. I think she said she was 4 or 6 at the time. And for the summer holidays, when her father came to collect her from the boarding school, this Irish nun. Okay, and remember, we hear so much about proselytizing, and so much about the, the the Christians converting Hindus, and so many of these things, which are true, they really did happen. But at the same time, so much of the goodness also happened. So when her father came to collect her from the boarding school, this nun told Swamiji's father that you need to give your daughter more books on Hindu mythology. She needs to read books and stories on Hindu mythology. And apparently, Swamiji's father was not a very religious man. And he says, and he asks this Catholic nun then, okay, what books do I give her? I don't know what to give her. And she says, maybe you can start with the Ramayana, okay, or the Mahabharata. I can't quite remember if she said that as well, but she gave those two suggestions to Swamiji's father.
Hmm.
And the father went and found these two abridged versions of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and gave them to his daughter, who just soaked them in. And she read them. So you see, the stories are always told in a different way to children. And in India, we've got the entire series of the Mahabharata, or so many stories of our scriptures through comics. Amar Chitra Katha has been doing them for years. Have been bringing the stories of mythology to us through comics. So almost every child, including me, who wasn't born and raised in India, had access to at least a few, earlier. So I have read them as well growing up, and we learn so much of our culture and our history and our mythology from those comics, abridged
Hmm.
versions. And then as she grew up, she started questioning, and she started reading more deeper, more, like the less childish versions of the myths and the stories and the scriptures. She is a fount of
Mm.
knowledge and wisdom, the way she connects things, the way she connects different religions, to understand the same fundamental essence of what we do and how we are. She is simply brilliant at the
Mhm.
depth of her knowledge, of her wisdom, of her love, her compassion. She is lovely.
Mm,
And I love saying this, and I love sharing the story about her, because she also teaches through the stories that she's read and she's learned and she's made her associations. So she didn't just take it at face value. She heard these different stories and she says, what's the point in this story and what's the point in that story? And then as you grow up, as you spend time, as you immerse yourself in the study, then it starts making a connection. Ah, okay. So this is where that story fits in.
yeah.
Or this is how this community looks at this story. You have to be open, because these stories are only because our mind only sees things in symbols and pictures.
Mm,
So when we visualize, it's much more powerful than us affirming verbally. So it's important. So if you can't visualize mentally, then a vision board with the pictures does help to capture that essence. And
mm,
that's why stories are important. Stories help, because while you listen to a story as if there's a movie going on, or hey, what's going to happen next, I wonder, your mind is already making connections. Your mind is thinking of, when maybe, hey, I know of that sister who did that, or we think of our brother, or we think of what we would do for our brother, or we question, would I really do that for my brother? I
mm,
mean, is that really important? I mean, how silly is this? And then what would happen if I did? So all of these things go on in our head. That's the power of stories and storytelling. And so it's not a new thing, although Coursera and Udemy have all these storytelling options, and now there are storytellers everywhere. Storytelling is part of our history and our culture. Our entire um,
yeah.
culture, civilization, uh, it's not a religion, but even the religious aspect of it is built on the foundation of storytelling. So it's an absolutely wonderful tradition to dip into and to evolve through as well. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Have a
Thank
great day.
you too. Thank you, Patty. Thank you for being here with us. Namaste. Thank you, Sudesh. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.